Is he gonna run?
Bullthorn
You know
doesn't run. He's Bullthorn. You know what's crazy? I actually
So you
almost
are
bought
you
the
are
Bullthorn
totally right.
skin for the memes. Like, I actually
Almost
his
bought it
skin
for the memes. That would be pretty funny.
instead of the Blackbriar skin. I almost bought Bullthorn.
Like your prize money, and you spend it on the Bullthorn skin.
Look at him, dude. Look how majestic he looks, dude. Look at that skin. Isn't it
Look
so
at him,
epic?
dude.
Look how it's doing absolutely nothing to let him win. You see that? It's Bullthorn. He's going off. Look at him, bro. It's Bullthorn.
Bullthorn will save us from our sins. Wait.
Bullthorn is our sin. Bullthorn is the accumulation of every bad idea that ever exists and put into one being. If you were to see what the word trog looked like,
Bullthorn is troglodyte in human form.
Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be adding another installment to my How to Actually Play the Game series, and for those of you who have been paying attention to this channel, I'm sure you knew it was only a matter of time before this video was created. I have 3 videos prior to this one, each explaining parts of how competitive play, or simply smart play, works. First, we looked at the basics of the revenge system, then moved on to how to properly gank opponents, and lastly, some basics in proper team fighting. We've been slowly building our knowledge with each video, and today, we finally get to look at the true competitive game mode itself, Dominion. I realize that this might be a little strange for some of you, who look at Dominion as just a simple game mode of capture zone, slice minions, kill the enemy. In essence, yeah, you're kinda right. On the surface, that's what the typical Dominion match looks like, especially in pub matches, where everyone is running around with their head cut off without any real strategy. But, as stated many times on this channel before, looks can be deceiving. There is more to playing Dominion than you might think, and today I will be joined by one of my buddies, Sykana. Sykana here was someone I met through the 2023 Pro-Am tournament, and was our team's IGL. Now, in a video prior to this one, I explained that For Honor doesn't have an official set of Pro League teams. Instead, For Honor's equivalent of Pro League are just highly competitive teams made up of highly skilled players that participate in a lot of tournaments. Sykana is an actual member of one of those incredibly successful teams. He taught me and my other teammates a thing or two about competitive play and reinforced his skill by being an absolute unit on the battlefield. I reached out for his assistance today to make sure you are all getting some top tier advice and quality content to learn how to properly play this game mode. He certainly helped me out, and I'm sure he can do the same for you. One last thing before we start. Thank you to everyone who joined my stream on June 1st while I hosted my first ever duel tournament. The VOD is still up on my Twitch if you want to check it out. Everyone had a blast, and I definitely intend on doing more of these tourneys in the future, so stay tuned. Congratulations to Low-Key as our champion of the duel. Enjoy the cold hard cash, my friend. You earned it. Now, I apologize that this video is going to be a little lengthy, but this is to provide a mass amount of palatable information, and I'll be dividing the video into 2 sections. The first section I'm calling Information, where you get some statistical advice and more of the actual bare bones of the game mode. The second half is called Strategies, where I will be showing how to actually put that statistical information into practical use, and ultimately win more games. For an overview of the information section, we will be covering the topics of overall objective, capturing zones, rotations, and Renown. In Dominion, your objective isn't to kill, survive, or even run around to gank people. Your overall objective is to accumulate points. Once your team reaches 1,000 points, you break the enemy's morale to fight, simply known as breaking in-game.
Enemy team is breaking.
Once the enemy team is in the breaking state, their players can no longer respawn. Once all enemy heroes are dead, you win. Simple enough. However, there is an exception to this rule. Normally, a Dominion match lasts 20 minutes maximum. But when a team enters breaking, the timer now becomes 4 minutes, and the team with the most points by the end of that timer will automatically win, even if they don't kill all heroes. If a team is breaking, they can sometimes achieve something called a rally, which means they rally to keep on fighting and leave the breaking state.
The enemy rally.
The game timer returns to the original time it normally would have been, and the game proceeds as normal. It's important to note that both teams can be breaking simultaneously, and this makes for the most intense match endings. You accumulate points a couple of ways, one of which is by killing the small soldiers, or minions, of the opposing side. Each minion kill gives your team 1 point, so mowing through an army of the enemy's minions can actually give quite a point boost. Another way to gain points is by killing the enemy players, or heroes, as each kill gives 5 points to your team. As you might guess, going through all the effort to kill one player for only 5 points isn't exactly worth it, and this is to ensure that running around getting kills is not the primary way to boost your score. The main method of accumulating points is by capturing and holding the 3 zones located around the map. In every Dominion map, you will find 3 areas that both teams are looking to control. 2 of these areas I will refer to as zones, or points, while the other is referred to as mid lane, or the minion lane. The 2 zones are captured by eliminating all enemy players within that zone's limits, and standing on the point for a couple of seconds. If more of your allies are standing with you, the zone will be captured faster. You can tell which team controls the zone by looking at the colored border of the zone, color of the floating letter above the zone, and by looking at the top right of your HUD. Blue indicates friendly, and orange indicates enemy. If the zone is appearing as white, it is either right at the beginning of the match where neither team has captured the point yet, or it means the zone is contested. When a zone is contested, that means at least one player from both teams is present at that point, and is accompanied by a unique sound cue. Upon capturing a zone, your team will be immediately awarded 100 points, which come associated with that zone, and that zone will begin to give your team a passive income of points. It's important to note that these 100 points are considered soft points, because they aren't permanent. If you lose that control point to the enemy team, your team loses the 100 points that were associated with it, and gives that 100 points to the opposing team. This causes an overall 200 point swing. This is how a team in breaking is able to rally. If the defenders have 1,020 points, but the attackers capture a defender-held zone, then the defenders will lose 100 points, and now only have a total of 920. With less than 1,000 points, the attackers will no longer be in breaking, and will rally. The hard points, or permanent points, are the score generated from the passive gain of zones, and any other way your team accumulates points. Occasionally, one team will have so many hard points that it is mathematically impossible for the opposing team to rally, and this is indicated by a lock icon over the point bar on the HUD. I usually refer to this as perma-breaking, but I've also heard it called a lockout. It is crucial that you not only capture, but viciously hold these points in order to achieve victory. For one, these points allow your teammates to heal, and without anywhere to heal, you're an easy target for your opponent looking for cheap renown. That renown is something we'll get into later. The other reason you need to hold these zones is for the point gain. There is something everyone should know about Dominion. The HUD is lying to you. By now, you are likely familiar with seeing either +1 or +2 pop up over certain zones at specific times to show the current points being gained, but those numbers are a lie. They are rounded numbers and give a false sense of what is actually at stake. When you only control a zone, the UI shows a +1. In reality, you are only gaining 0.74 points per second. When you boost a zone, the UI displays a +2. In reality, the zone is now worth 1.85 points per second. In order to boost a zone, one member of your team needs to be standing on your captured zone. If more than one team member is present, the boost will not accumulate. Only one person is needed. When a zone is contested, your team will still control the soft 100 points from the zone, but all boosting and passive point gain will be completely halted. Additionally, in a contested zone, neither team will be able to heal, regardless of which side technically controls it. Moving on to the mid lane, the rules for this objective are a little different, so listen up. This zone is not captured by standing on it, but by the presence, or lack thereof, by minions. Say the enemy controls mid lane. Their minions will push up to a certain distance, called the front line, and remain there for as long as possible. Also, a few side notes here, minions killing each other don't award any points. An actual player has to get the minion kills for there to be any point gain. Additionally, there are minion spawn rate and spawn number rules, but to get into that would be too much information for this video, and you can find perfectly good info on that elsewhere, so it's probably best you get that info from them. First, you need to kill off the opposing minions that remain at that front line. This can either be done by waiting around for your own minions to fight for the point themselves and eventually reclaim the mid lane, assuming they aren't being killed by an opposing player. But the way you absolutely should take minion lane is by sending a player there to manually kill the enemy soldiers. Once all the enemy minions have either died or retreated from the front line, the zone will now appear white and be contested. If you can get your minions to establish a presence at your front line, your team will now have control over the mid lane. Like the other zones, capturing the mid lane gives 100 soft points to your team, and you can lose those points if the mid lane falls. However, the passive point gain for the minion lane is 1.35 points per second, which is nearly double the passive point gain of an unboosted zone. The drawbacks of mid lane are that you cannot heal on it, even if your team controls it, and you cannot boost the zone either. But remember that each minion kill gives your team 1 point. If you control the mid lane and farm minions, this makes mid by far the most valuable point to control. Reminder, it does not matter how many players of either team are in the minion lane. Whichever team's minions hold the front line has total control of the zone. If the zone is contested, the passive point gain will be stripped away and the 100 points removed. Now that we understand basics of the different zones, let's look at proper rotations. To achieve the maximum pressure on your enemies and point gain for your team, there are some general rules to follow. Someone should be sitting in a zone, fully healed and boosting at all times. Once one of their teammates is in trouble or low on health and needs to be replaced in a team fight, the player who is in the zone needs to come off and peel for their low health teammate. This gives a plethora of benefits. Your teammate escapes alive to deny the enemy team Renown, and that same teammate can then simultaneously heal on your point and boost the zone for more score. Finally, the peeler is now a new and fully healthy threat to the enemy team. Rinse and repeat this process, and behold, you are using the simple but useful proper rotations between teammates and zones that you control. Furthermore, it is important to realize that there are 2 different map types, each with their own set of rotation rules. By map types, I am referring to how the capture points are oriented across the battlefield. Although I haven't heard them called any specific names, I typically refer to these 2 types as either home point or linear. More often, linear maps are called horizontal maps. I just always happen to use the term linear since it made the most sense to me, so that's what I'll be referring to them as. The only maps exempt from this rule are the Shard and Forge, but we'll ignore those for today. A home point map is just that, a map where each team has its own defined home point zone, while the minion lane is between the both of them. A perfect example of this is Sanctuary Bridge. Each team has a clear and obvious zone that is placed near their spawn point, and should act like a home base. The majority of fighting happens in the mid lane, with teammates rotating in and out of the home point. Now let's look at how you should rotate from spawn. Say it's the very start of the game, and you are playing on a home point type map. You should be sending your fastest player to capture your team's home point, while the other 3 head to the mid lane. Observe the enemy's actions, and the single at home point should be ready for a rotation. A linear map is one where all 3 zones are placed in a straight line, or linear line. Mid lane is in the center of the map, with both zones on either side of it. Here, there is no clear home point for either team, but this is replaced instead with something called the best point. The best point is the zone physically closer to the minion lane. This is where a great deal of fighting occurs, in addition to the minion lane. The reason you want this point so badly is because the closer proximity to the mid lane allows for faster and safer rotations, and I don't need to tell you the impact that will have on your score. A perfect example of a linear map is Temple Garden. All 3 zones are placed in a linear fashion, but point C has a much faster pathway to the minion lane. C is the best point on Temple Garden, while A is considered the off point. If you are just starting a game with a linear type map, there are a few different options you can choose. Option 1. Send 3 players to the best point, and the best duelist player to the mid lane. This sacrifices your likelihood to take mid right off the bat, but this does allow you an opportunity to take the best point quickly. Assuming you win the fight at best point, you can get the quick rotation to mid lane with you and your allies healed and ready to go. This is usually a better strategy on maps like Temple Garden and Overwatch, where the best point is so much closer to the mid lane, and the best point is just that much more valuable. Option 2. If you are not confident you can win the team fight at best point, send 3 people to the mid lane, and your fastest player to cap the off point. Rotate as best you can, and if you happen to see an opportunity to take the best point, you absolutely should. Also, keep in mind that you don't need to spread yourself thin. Establish yourself at one of the points and rotate people to control the mid lane. Controlling 2 zones is mathematically enough to win a Dominion game, so you don't need to be sending someone to backcap the enemy. Your ally will be needed elsewhere in order to actually maintain control and hold off the relentless pressure from your enemy. There are some special exceptions to this rule, such as getting a team wipe where you can afford to spread out and cap all zones, but generally you should only be worried about mid lane, and your home point or best point. This also helps you keep a presence at all the zones you control. Too many times I see players leave the zone they just captured and quote unquote donate that zone to the enemy. This is an absurd miscalculation. Always have someone guarding your zones. Make the enemy work for it. Keep those zones under your control for as long as humanly possible.
There's a few definitions of winning here, but assuming you're under the control of a home point and B, then you want to just maintain those 2 points. That way you'll have steadier and faster point generation than your opponents. If you manage to get a triple cap, then you want to match the number of players that your opponents send to each point. This way it's very hard for them to get any points.
Although this isn't exactly a rotate, you can do something that has a similar effect, and I don't really know where else to put it in the video, so I'll drop it here. Let's say you've been waiting in your team's zone, and notice your low health teammate being chased by an enemy. If your ally is running towards you, you can do something called connectoring. Simply run out of the zone and stop the enemy from chasing your ally. Engage the enemy in a 1v1 and block him from entering the zone as best you can. Remember, your teammate can't heal if the zone is contested, so they'll be relying on you to keep the enemy out. But don't worry, if your teammate is smart, you won't be fighting alone forever. Once your ally feels they have enough HP, you two can begin a proper gank on the opponent to dispatch him quickly. The goal of connectoring is to buy time for your vulnerable teammates, and it's one of those little micro actions that can mean the difference between a good team and a great one.
One of the more difficult positions to be in, say you're on Temple Garden and you're on C, alone and at full health, while your teammate is at the archway in between C and B with 2 opponents on him and he's low. But there's also another guy on his way from attacker spawn. It's a difficult position because you can't leave the point at risk of giving it up, but you also can't leave your teammate there to die. The unfortunate reality of this situation is that your teammate is probably dead unless help is on the way. But what you should ideally do is either stay on the point or go connector, so that way if your teammate does manage to get out, then he can heal, or if you stay on the point, you don't give it up and you can gank with your low health teammate.
Stalling is also something that can be considered in the rotations category. There will be some unfortunate times where you may be called upon to stall a specific zone. When stalling, your ultimate goal is to buy time for your allies to come to your aid and give way to a teamfight instead of an unfavorable scenario. The best way to do this is to play totally defensive and make it as difficult as possible for the enemy to gank you. Remember, you are trying to survive, not kill the enemy. If you are able to kill the enemy, great, but that's ultimately frosting on the cake. You're just looking to buy time. One last add-on here, stop pushing 1v1s. Dominion is a team-based game mode. If you're here for duels, you're in the wrong place. If you are losing a fight and need your teammate to come and save you, that's not only okay, it's the smart play. Your objective here is to win, not try and coddle a false sense of honor that ultimately lets your team down. Tactical retreats are necessary and expected. This is also because there's far more luck involved in a 1v1, whereas fighting with your team greatly increases the skill ceiling. You want to be able to show off all your skills that you've worked for, instead of guessing wrong too many times in a duel while trying to save your own pride. This also extends to pushing outnumbered situations. If there are 2 people on a zone, why on God's green earth would you willingly put yourself in a position to be ganked, sent back to the respawn screen, and feed your enemies easy renown? Stop it. Stay with your team. This kind of behavior leads to your team being staggered. Just wait a couple more seconds for your teammates to rotate or respawn and push together. You will never win your matches otherwise. Renown is a reflection of the individual player's score. You gain renown by pretty much any action that helps your team achieve victory. This includes killing minions and enemy players, reviving teammates, capturing, boosting, and even contesting zones. Renown is awarded to players on an individual basis, and can be tracked by the white bar in the bottom left of your HUD, just above your feats. As the bar progresses from left to right, you increase in renown level. Each time you gain the level, 0 being the start point and 4 being maximum, you unlock your next tier feat. It takes more Renown score to level up each time, so it's important to pay attention to your Renown score.
The specific Renown values are 50 Renown for level 1, 120 for level 2, 210 for level 3, and 320 for level 4.
You especially want to get to your tier 4 feats as quickly as possible, as they are almost always the most powerful abilities on the battlefield and can easily swing the outcome of any teamfight. This is where you might have heard the term Renown lead. Sometimes your team can be ahead in points and on track for a victory, but based on the actions of the enemy and poor decision making of your allies, the enemy team could have far more powerful feats available than you do. Although there isn't an official tracking mechanism for which team has the Renown lead, you can bring up the scoreboard, observe the Renown section, and look at each player's Renown score. This can give you an estimate of which team has more powerful tricks up their sleeve. When left out of control, you can see teams who are previously getting destroyed acquire their tier 4 halfway through the match and then wreak havoc as nothing is able to stop them from imposing their power. This is another reason why peeling and subbing out for your teammates is crucial, as you do your best to deny the enemy team Renown score, and thus prolonging them access to their powerful abilities. All this being said, I need to make sure you all understand this. Use your feats. Your feats are powerful, and they are there for you to use them. You earned the Renown, now let your hard work pay off. I know it's really easy to get caught up in waiting for that perfect moment to use your stuff, but stop it. They have cooldowns. They'll be back. You got this far without them, you can keep fighting till they return. Of course, you shouldn't just waste your feats entirely, be smart about them. But if there's any inkling, hey, it would probably be really useful to use fill-in-the-blank feat here, then you should be using it. Guy is only at 1 bar of health, use that longbow so you can heal on point and avoid giving revenge. You're nearly dead, but could stall for your teammates for a few more seconds with Juggernaut? Use it. Use anything and everything to tip the scales in your favor to achieve victory.
Whoa. I heard the words and I was like, oh. It's like taking a shotgun to a chihuahua. It's not nice to see.
Congratulations, you've gotten through all the deep content for the day. Now though, let's look at some better strategies to put our knowledge to use. We'll start off with something I already kind of explained earlier, but it's worth repeating. Mid lane is the key. The team who holds mid lane better is almost always the team that wins. As stated earlier, the point gain for just holding the minion lane in your possession is effectively double the passive income of holding a regular zone, those values being 1.35 points per second and 0.74 points per second respectively. Now it's true that you can't boost the mid lane, but you can boost a regular zone, and boosting one of those does give you more passive income at 1.85 points per second. But that doesn't take into account each minion kill at the minion lane, which gives you 1 point each. Someone holding the mid lane, while also farming minions, is going to outpace the boosted zone by a long shot, and this is why holding the minion lane is literally vital to your victory. If that wasn't enough, whoever is clearing the minion lane always gets a good boost of renown from all the minion kills, so holding mid also brings benefits to the individual player. Completely switching gears here, something that everyone should keep in mind is that revives are not your friend. Most of the time, reviving a teammate is actually harmful for the team, as you are usually forcing your ally at only 50% health to be in a situation where they must fight, can't heal, and are a perfect opportunity for easy renown for the enemy. Wait the extra 20 seconds for them to respawn, group up, and get back to the fight. The only time you should be reviving teammates is when they are currently on or adjacent to a zone that you currently control. This can give the medic player a renown boost, and the revived ally can quickly get back to healing. Don't forget to connect her here if you need to. If your teammates are on best point, but they're outnumbered, nearly dead, and there's no way you joining them will change the outcome of the fight, go cap a different zone. Cut further losses. If your teammates are effectively stalling a zone, get there as fast as possible to assist them. Go where you can achieve something productive for your team, and listen to the needs of your allies.
When you're triple capped, the first thing that you want to do is have everyone group up and go for mid, since it's the only point that you don't need to kill anybody to get. And then after that, you can do a 2-2 split on both other home points. This way they have to match you, so you'll still hold B while they fight you for the other points. Or if they decide to go B instead, then they will be down one player and you can gank and get the point. You can also do a 1-3 split to one of the home points, which gives you a better chance of getting it. One important thing that you want to be doing is gauging whether scenarios are winnable. So if your team just barely loses a fight on C, you have two really weak opponents, there isn't really a reason that you shouldn't go interfere and not only stop their healing, but potentially win over the better point. And even if you're not going for the better point, you can still get pressure just by winning that fight alone, because you can have two of them dead in their home point.
I have this last little random tip too. Use something called revenge holding, or simply venge holding. This just means when you get revenge, you don't always have to trigger it immediately. If you can safely wait for it, and I mean safely, then do so. If you aren't in any apparent danger of dying immediately, holding on to your revenge can help you in a better situation later, such as in this clip. I held revenge for quite some time before I used it to counter an enemy player who also got revenge. This made it exceedingly more difficult for the enemy player to get any value of his own revenge. In a teamfight scenario, getting Venge also puts a lot of pressure on your enemies, as at any point you can pop that thing and begin to trash everything around you. The enemy will likely be playing more defensive, and you can use this passive pressure to gain the upper hand. Thank you all so very much for staying till the end of today's video. I know this was a lot of information, and I hope you could walk away with at least one helpful piece of advice. I'd like to thank Sykana for the added help in today's video, always helpful getting to work with you. For more of my content, you can follow me on Twitch, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and join my channel Discord. As always, take care, and don't forget to join the dark side.